Hello everyone, and welcome back to IRL Lore with me, Segovax. Today, we will be looking at several texts that give us insight into the prelude to disaster. The first text comes to us from cuneiform parallels to the Old Testament, which doesn't give much information on its origin, but appears to be a bilingual text with versions both in Sumerian and in Akkadian. Let's dive in. The Legend of the Seven Evil Demons. Raging storms, evil gods are they, ruthless demons, who in heaven's vault were created, are they, workers of evil are they. They lift up the head to evil, every day to evil, destruction to work. We are immediately introduced to the subject of the text, these seven evil demons, and told they were made in the high heavens, which will be elaborated on later. And I think it would be fitting to state now that perhaps evil is a matter of perspective here, and that perhaps the author of this text may be operating under some deliberately inculcated misapprehensions, and may be telling a carefully curated narrative designed to impart a specific impression, which may or may not be accurate to reality. In short, I think it's propaganda. Where other tales may have warped over time thanks to the natural telephone game effect, I believe this one is being intentionally misrepresented for political purposes. You'll see why soon. Continuing. Of these seven, the first is the south wind, Lacuna. The second is a dragon, whose mouth is opened, Lacuna, that none can measure. The third is a grim leopard, which carries off the young, Lacuna. The fourth is a terrible Shibu, Lacuna. The fifth is a furious wolf, who knoweth not to flee. The sixth is a rampant Lacuna, which marches against God and king. The seventh is a storm, an evil wind, which takes vengeance. Seven are they, messengers of King Anu are they. From city to city darkness work they, a hurricane, which mightily hunts in the heavens are they. Thick clouds that bring darkness in heaven are they. Gusts of wind rising which cast gloom over the bright day are they. With the Imkulu, the evil wind, forcing their way are they. There we see the evil wind mentioned, as it was mentioned in Zu and the Primordial Genesis, and we will see again more up close in a coming video. Up next, however, we are told these seven march at the right hand of Adad, the Thunderer, and are perhaps why he has that as his most prominent epithet. He appears in the myth of Zu, among many other myths, but in that one being one of the gods who declines to face Anzu in battle. Since then, a lot of time has passed, potentially going on 250,000 years, and he is now apparently tasked with overseeing these terrifying weapons, as we shall now see. The overflowing of Adad, mighty destroyers are they. At the right hand of Adad, stalking are they. In the height of heaven, like lightning flashing are they. To wreak destruction, forward go they. In the broad heaven, the home of Anu, the king, evilly do they arise, and none to oppose. When Enlil heard these tidings, a plan in his heart he pondered. With Ea, exalted Masu of the gods, he took counsel. Sin, Shamash, and Ishtar, whom he had set to order the vault of heaven. With Anu he divided the lordship of the whole heaven. To these three gods, his offspring, day and night without ceasing, he ordained to stand. So this may seem a tad unclear at first, but think about it. First we are told these seven originate from the high heavens, presumably the heaven of Anu. Next, it is made explicit, in the heaven of Anu they now arise. The other great gods of heaven and earth, along with Ea and Enlil, hold a council, though what specifically about is unclear. The demons are not specifically mentioned, either in favor of or opposition towards, and these seven take no aggressive action towards Anu or any of the gods of this council later in the text, with the exception of Sin, who may have been more involved with the action due to his lunar station and proximity to Earth, but we'll get to that shortly. All that is discussed in the meeting are the orders and stations of the gods, perhaps hinting at yet another threat to the established order, someone trying to take the tablets of destinies and accompanying Enlil power for themselves again, like Anzu so long ago. So if these demons are evil, and they originate from Anu to do Anu's handiwork, seem at worst neutral to Anu's subordinates, the great gods, but evil from the perspective of this author, would it not seem this author, and thus the god he follows, is in conflict with Anu and the gods of heaven? As I said, evil seems to be a matter of perspective here. The vagueness of the council scene almost seems like an attempt at plausible deniability of their god being the problem here. Like, oh, the great gods met about something, don't worry about it. And then all of a sudden these evil demons came to disturb the shit out of my god and we faithful. As if it is not the predictable result of the conflict the author's god is precipitating. A lie by omission. Back to the text. When the 7 evil gods stormed the vault of heaven, before the gleaming sin they set themselves angrily. The mighty Shamash, Adad the warrior, they brought on their side. Ishtar with Anu, the king, moved into a shining dwelling, exercising dominion over the heavens. Here follow some broken lines which yield no continuous sense. Day and night he was dark, i.e. sin, in his dwelling. In the dwelling of his dominion he sat not down. The evil gods, the messengers of Anu, the king, are they. Raising their evil heads in the night, shaking themselves, are they. So the 7 arrive on the moon. The great gods are on their side, but suddenly sin is darkened. The lights go out in his dwelling, and he sat not down. Maybe the artificial gravity was turned off too? The text seems to want us to believe it was caused by the evil demon's arrival, but I suspect it was actually caused by someone who would have liked to prevent the later deployment of these demons. Notice that the great gods, possibly friendly with the 7, both parties being servants of Anu, are dismayed by the darkening of sin, as we shall soon see. The next brief passages will also conclude the text and reveal our presumptive culprit. Evil searching out are they, from the heaven like a wind, over the land rush they. Enlil saw the darkening of the hero Sin in heaven. The Lord spoke to his minister Nusku. O minister Nusku, my message unto the ocean bring, the tidings of my son Sin, who in heaven has been sadly darkened. Unto Ea in the ocean announce it. Nusku exalted the word of his Lord. To Ea in the ocean he went quickly. To the prince, the exalted Masu, the Lord Nudimud. Nusku, the word of his Lord there announced. Ea in the ocean heard that word. He bit his lip and filled his mouth with wailing. Ea called his son Marduk and gave him the message. Go, my son Marduk, son, a prince. The gleaming sin has been sadly darkened in heaven. His darkening is seen in the heavens. The 7 evil gods, death-dealing, fearless are they. The 7 evil gods like a flood rush on. The land they fall upon, do they. Against the land like a storm, they rise, do they. Before the gleaming sin they set themselves angrily. The mighty Shamash, Hadad the warrior, they brought on their side. The rest of the tablet and text is lost, but from the preceding passage I think we can surmise Marduk was being set up as the hero, the one who will free sin from his darkness. Which would likely be something he could do, since I'm pretty sure he caused the darkness to begin with. Though I suspect in actuality power was restored to Sin against Marduk's wishes and efforts. I wonder if it's not mostly true, though. The text, minus the parts that try to paint Marduk in a favorable light. It's possible Ea did tell Marduk of the coming of the 7 to the moon, not because he was on side with Marduk's plan to seize control of Earth and wanted, to provide intel, but rather because he was a concerned dad warning his creepy son of what the consequences of his continued actions might be. Though still having some familial sympathies, Ea seemed otherwise fully on side with the kingdom of heaven against Marduk. But why is all of this happening? What is driving this conflict, apparently serious enough to involve the deployment of the superweapons of the gods? I think here is where I must sadly resort to what borders on truly wild speculation, less directly supported by clear textual evidence, and what evidence there is requires some leaps to connect. This, I feel, is the weakest part of my theoretical framework, the part most reminiscent of the sort of controlled opposition media designed to discredit this line of inquiry in the public consciousness, such as the television show Ancient Aliens. In my defense, this period is somewhat sparsely covered in terms of existing textual evidence, and confused in the telling of what does exist by natural consequence of the violent reality and subsequent revisionist history of the period. Basically the same reason the Dark Ages are so dark early on. So, without much to go on, I am left only to extrapolate, based on what we know about the preceding and subsequent events. Nevertheless, I find this explanation plausible, and rely on it for my reasoning, so here goes. First, we have a text called Inana and Ibe, which I believe shows Inanna laying siege to Marduk within a mountain, where he is holed up, apparently evading her retribution for the death of Dumuzi. I think you'll see why. Let's just dive right in. Inana and Ibe. Goddess of the fearsome divine powers, clad in terror, riding on the great divine powers, Inanna, made complete by the strength of the holy Ankar weapon, drenched in blood, rushing around in great battles, with shield resting on the ground, covered in storm and flood, great Lady Inanna, knowing well how to plan conflicts, you destroy mighty lands with arrow and strength and overpower lands. In heaven and on earth you roar like a lion, and devastate the people. Like a huge wild bull you triumph over lands which are hostile. Like a fearsome lion you pacify the insubordinate and unsubmissive with your gall. My lady, on your acquiring the stature of heaven, maiden Inanna, on your becoming as magnificent as the earth, on your coming forth like Utu the king and stretching your arms wide, on your walking in heaven and wearing fearsome terror, on your wearing daylight and brilliance on earth, on your walking in the mountain ranges and bringing forth beaming rays, on your bathing the Girin plants of the mountains in light, on your giving birth to the bright mountain, the holy place, on your lacuna, on your being strong, with the mace like a joyful lord, like an enthusiastic lord, on your exulting in such battle like a destructive weapon. The black-headed people ring out in song, and all the lands sing their song sweetly. I shall praise the Lady of Battle, the great child of Suen, Maiden Inanna. Inanna announced, when I, the goddess, was walking around in heaven, walking around on earth, when I, Inanna, yada yada, was walking around in Elam and Subir, when I was walking around in the Lulubi mountains, when I turned towards the center of the mountains, as I, the goddess, approached the mountain, it showed me no respect. As I, Inanna, approached the mountain, it showed me no respect. As I approached the mountain range of Ibe, it showed me no respect. Since they showed me no respect, since they did not put their noses to the ground for me, since they did not rub their lips in the dust for me, I shall personally fill the soaring mountain range with my terror. Against its magnificent sides I shall place magnificent battering rams. Against its small sides I shall place small battering rams. I shall storm it, and start the game of holy Inanna. In the mountain range I shall start battles and prepare conflicts. I shall prepare arrows in the quiver, shall lacuna sling stones with the rope. I shall begin the polishing of my lance. I shall prepare the throw stick and the shield. I shall set fire to its thick forests. I shall take an axe to its evil doing. I shall make Gibel, the purifier, bare his holy teeth at its watercourses. I shall spread this terror through the inaccessible mountain range Arata. Like a city which An has cursed, may it never be restored. Like a city at which Enlil has frowned, may it never again lift its neck up. May the mountain tremble when I approach. May Ibe give me honor and praise me. Inanna, the child of Suen, put on the garment of royalty and girded herself in joy. She bedecked her forehead with terror and fearsome radiance. She arranged cornelian rosettes around her holy throat, She brandished the 7-headed Sita weapon vigorously to her right and placed straps of lapis lazuli on her feet. At dusk she came forth regally and followed the path to the Gate of Wonder. She made an offering to An and addressed a prayer to him. An, in delight at Inana, stepped forward and took his place. He filled the seat of honor of heaven. Inana announced, "An, my father, I greet you. Lend your ear to my words. You have made me terrifying among the deities in heaven. Owing to you my word has no rival in heaven or on earth. You have given me the lacuna, and the Kilig weapon, and the Antibal, and the Mansium emblems. To set the Sokol in position, and make the throne and foundation firm, to carry the might of the Sita weapon, which bends like the Mubum tree, to hold the ground with the 6-fold yoke, to extend the thighs with the 4-fold yoke, to pursue murderous raids and widespread military campaigns, to appear to those kings in the lacuna of heaven like moonlight, to shoot the arrow from the arm and fall on fields, orchards, and forests like the tooth of the locust, to take the harrow to rebel lands, to remove the locks from their city gates, so the doors stand open. King An, you have indeed given me all this and lacuna. You have placed me at the right hand of the king in order to destroy rebel lands. May he, with my aid, smash heads like a falcon in the foothills of the mountain. King An, and may I, lacuna, your name throughout the land like a thread. May he destroy the lands as a snake in a crevice. May he make them slither around like a Sajkal snake coming down from a mountain. May he establish control over the mountain, examine it and know its length. May he go out on the holy campaign of An and know its depths. The gods, lacuna, since the Anuna deities have lacuna. How can it be that the mountain did not fear me in heaven and on earth? That the mountain did not fear me, Inana, in heaven and on earth? That the mountain range... Didn't rub its lips in the dust. Hand it over to my terror. May I fill my hand with the soaring mountain range and hand it over to my terror. She repeats the formula of magnificent sides, let me place battering rams, prepare arrows in the quiver, set fire to its thick forests, Gibble the purifier to bear his holy teeth at its watercourses, like a city uncursed. May Ebe give me honor and praise me. An, king of the deities, answered her. My little one demands the destruction of this mountain. What is she taking on? Inanna demands the destruction of this mountain. What is she taking on? It has poured fearsome terror on the abodes of the gods. It has spread fear among the holy dwellings of the Anuna deities. It has poured its terror and ferocity over the land. It has poured the mountain range's radiance and fear over all the lands. Its arrogance extends grandly to the center of heaven. Fruit hangs in its flourishing gardens, and luxuriance spreads forth. Its magnificent trees are themselves a source of wonder to the roots of heaven. In Ibe, lacuna, lions are abundant under the canopy of trees and bright branches. It makes wild rams and stags freely abundant. It stands wild bulls in flourishing grass, deer couple among the cypress trees of the mountain range. You cannot pass through its terror and fear. The mountain range's radiance is fearsome. Maiden Inanna, you cannot oppose it. Thus he spoke. The mistress, in her rage and anger, opened the arsenal and pushed on the lapis lazuli gate. She brought out magnificent battle and called up a great storm. Holy Inanna reached for the quiver. She raised a towering flood with evil silt. She stirred up an evil raging wind with potsherds. My lady confronted the mountain range. She advanced step by step. She sharpened both edges of her dagger. She grabbed Ibe's neck, as if ripping up esparto grass. She pressed the dagger teeth into its interior. She roared like thunder. The rocks forming the body of Ibe clattered down its flanks. From its sides and crevices great serpents spat venom. She damned its forests and cursed its trees. She damned its forests and cursed its trees. She killed its oak trees with drought. She poured fire on its flanks and made its smoke dense. The goddess established authority over the mountain. Holy Inanna did as she wished. She went to the mountain range of Ibe and addressed it. Mountain range, because of your elevation, because of your height, because of your attractiveness, because of your beauty, because of your wearing a holy garment, because of your reaching up to heaven, because you did not put your nose to the ground, because you did not rub your lips in the dust, I have killed you and brought you low. As with an elephant, I have seized your tusks. As with a great wild bull, I have brought you to the ground by your thick horns. As with a bull, I have forced your great strength to the ground and pursued you savagely. I have made tears in the norm in your eyes. I have placed laments in your heart. Birds of sorrow are building nests on these flanks. For a second time, rejoicing in her fearsome terror, she spoke out righteously. My father Enlil has poured my great terror over the center of the mountains. On my right side he has placed a weapon. On my left side a lacuna is placed. My anger, a harrow with great teeth, has torn the mountain apart. I have built a palace, and done much more. I have put a throne in place, and made its foundation firm. I have given the Kurjara cult performers a dagger and prod. I have given the Gala cult performers Ub and Lilis drums. I have changed the headgear of the Pili Pili cult performers. In my victory I rush towards the mountain. In my victory I rush towards Ibe, the mountain range. I went forward like a surging flood, and like rising water I overflowed the dam. I imposed my victory on the mountain. I imposed my victory on Ibe. For destroying Ibe, great child of Suen, maiden Inana be praised. Nisaba be praised. I just let it run because it's a pretty cool text in my opinion, and either you see its potential relation to this tragic love story of Inanna and Dumuzi, or you don't, as it lacks any explicit mention of Dumuzi. However, Inanna's fury and the presence of opposition gone to ground both seem to fit. The snake symbolism fighting back against Inanna from the mountain is what really sells it for me, fitting for Marduk being a son of Enki. You can make up your own mind, but I have some more evidence to present, hopefully before you do. Next, we will look at a Babylonian fragment that Sitchin cites from the University of Pennsylvania collection, seeming to detail the trial and sentencing of Marduk. I can't find any other source, so I'll read it here as Sitchin presents it. I will have the page in question on screen for a few seconds at the end for your inspection. So this text identifying Marduk with Azag, who appears in previous Egyptian-related texts, supposedly takes place after the events of Inanna and Ibe, and details Marduk coming out to stand trial. To the place of reverence by the river, with him who was accused they stepped. In truth, they made the enemies stand aside. Justice was performed. On this day, the lady herself, she who speaks truth, the accuser of Azag, the great princess, an awesome judgment uttered. In the great envelope that is sealed, with no one to offer him nourishment, alone to suffer, the potable watercourse to be cut off. So that's all from that for now. I know it seems not much with zero elaboration. Don't worry, we'll come back to it. You may also notice that this page includes an illustration depicting a cylinder seal, which itself allegedly shows Ishtar in combat above the 3 pyramids of the Giza complex, and an Ankh symbol. Yeah. Oh, come on now. You know it couldn't be a discussion of this general topic without mentioning the pyramids, my dude. So, Sitchin believes this quote-unquote mountain to be the Great Pyramid, and makes a compelling case for it, with an in-depth analysis of the layout and history of the structure. And I'd like to point out that, in terms of chronology, this works even with the mainstream historiography accepted age of the Giza complex. I believe it's much older, but this takes place within the time that modern academia believes the Giza pyramids were built erroneously, I believe. Sitchin makes this case, I think, quite well, But it is a case, however, that does not seem to be supported by the Inana and Ibi text from which we get the premise of this fight happening at all. The Ibi Mountains are mentioned as being alongside Elam, to the east of Sumeria in what is today Iran. Plausible, these Elamite people were famously warlike and rebellious, causing problems for the civilized people of the plain, and perhaps Marduk found shelter with them, had a secret mountain base there or something. Regardless, whether it was a natural mountain in Iran or thereabouts, or a man-made one in Egypt, I think the underlying events of the text remain unchanged, and the interpretation remains plausible either way. But that's for you to decide. Let's continue with our last stop on the wild speculation ride, though. The resurrection of Bel Marduk. This is a difficult one to present in my style, because it's a very common tradition that existed in a bunch of forms across different polities and eras, seemingly forming a part of the New Year tradition for many peoples later on, some of which are still extant today even, and thusly has about a jillion different variations, none of them particularly great for demonstrating my point. The best I can do is this badly fragmented tablet, apparently a bilingual Assyrian-Babylonian text, that may actually help demonstrate what I mean when I say this story was everywhere. Because it's highly likely that the Assyrians had their own very similar version of this play performed in their own New Year's festival independently of the Babylonians, long before the traditions merged when the latter was conquered and absorbed by the former. That pre-existing syncretism likely helping to facilitate the merger of these traditions as well, like an Eastern version of the later Mediterranean Interpretatio Graeca, and, I believe, with the same root cause. Not whatever boring cope academia has to explain it away with, of course, but because both peoples were clearly calling the same entity by different names, and quickly noticed this fact. My point is, this story was of huge and widely recognized importance, and, much like Gilgamesh, was not canonized, so with differing details between versions, but still had roughly the same narrative structure, story beats, and overall point. So instead of doing what I usually do, i.e. presenting the text in as much completeness as I'm able with a convenient audio track to allow you, dear listener, to make up your own mind what you think is being described, instead, I will read the details from this version, which I feel are most relevant, and fill in the remaining gist with my own summary. Let's go. The resurrection of Bel Marduk, also called the Ordeals of Marduk. Nabu, who comes from Borsippa, he comes to greet his father, who has been taken captive. Nabu, who turns back and goes to Borsippa, and sprinkles here and there stamens of the date palms there. That is the rebellion, lacuna. First two lines are great so far. Good detail. Wish there wasn't that lacuna there and we knew more about the rebellion. It is clearly Marduk who is imprisoned. Nabu, who comes, stands over and watches. He is the criminal who is with Bel, lacuna, because he is with Bel. Tashmetu, who bows down with him, she has come to greet him. The lady of Babylon, who does not go to the Akitu temple, she is the governess of the temple. Lacuna, you know the temple, guard the temple. I hold you responsible for it. She is the governess of the temple. They ask her, who is the criminal? The lady of Babylon, on whose back is black wool, and on her front multicolored wool. Lacuna. On her front is the blood of the heart which was shed. Lacuna. Sakukutu, who goes around the city. She is his wailing woman, and goes around the city. Lacuna is the criminal who was present with Bel. They Ashishur, lacuna. They have killed the daughter of Anu, lacuna. So here it seems to say a daughter of Anu was killed, rather than Dumuzi. But again, the badly fragmented nature makes it difficult to tell for sure. And about a detail which could fit within the standard effects of the telephone game, this story likely being recorded minimum 1,300 years since the collapse, and preceding events even being described, while the rest of the story seems to fit. I say this especially because of a later line making contemporary reference to another text we've covered on this channel, Enuma Elish, and its similar place in the New Year celebration, though I think it was previously more popular in earlier centuries. This text is practically modern compared to something like Enki and the World Order or the Myth of Zu. Okay, back to the text. Enuma Elish, which is recited and which they chant in front of Bel in Nisan, that concerns the prisoner. Lacuna, they sing, Lacuna. He says prayers and makes supplications to them. He recites that before Shamash. They were favors for Ashur. I did them. What is my crime? Lacuna, which in the rays of Shamash Lacuna. Lacuna who scans the heavens. She is praying to Ashur, Anu, Sin, Shamash, and Adad. Keep me alive. It could be the Lady of Babylon, presumably Sarpanit, praying here. But I have to notice how similar it is to what we've heard before of Dumuzi's last words, the female pronouns in keeping with this text seemingly thinking of Dumuzi as a girl. The text is badly broken, but we have some possible descriptions of Marduk's immurement, as well as the vigil being kept outside next. Lacuna, it is in fear, he quickly thirsts for water. Lacuna is libated. Lacuna which he libates and pours, that is turbid water. Lacuna who roams the streets, he is looking for Marduk. Where is the prisoner? The Lady of Babylon, whose hands are stretched out, she is praying to Sin and Shamash. Keep Bel alive. The text goes on being barely intelligible, link below if you want to check it out, but cuts off before concluding. Roughly, the conclusion as I understand it is that Marduk is pardoned, thanks to these pleas, and comes forth from his captivity, or is resurrected from the dead, maybe both, and the true killer of Dumuzi is hastily seized and killed without being identified to the audience. Everybody lives happily ever after. And feel free to check me on that. There's a lot already written on the subject of pre-Christian resurrection stories, this story included. I think it was even mentioned in that old internet conspiracy meme documentary, Zeitgeist. Anybody remember that? Guess the layman may have heard of this from there. Point is, I'm not making it up. Anyway, to recap, Marduk is besieged by Inanna within the Great Pyramid, or maybe somewhere else, roughly in line with the events and motivations described in Inanna and Bilulu. Unrelated, but I headcanon that this is when the Sphinx's nose was really shot off. Next, Marduk is tried and convicted for his involvement with Dumuzi, and a simple solution is found, with his being entombed alive within the Great Pyramid, or maybe somewhere else. But it seems he is later granted a pardon, is revived and rescued, and the freshly traumatized Marduk decides to reap the fruit which has become ripe, and ensure he is positioned such that he cannot be persecuted in this way again. The stage is set for catastrophe. So that's the theory, and not my theory, mind you. I'd be lying if I said Sitchin's writings have not had a large influence on my trajectory of study, but it would be an even greater dishonesty to not credit this theory to its originator. Sitchin's interpretation of these texts is of groundbreaking and largely unrecognized significance, and I earnestly feel represents strides of the like not made in the field since before the Second World War. I don't think he's infallible. His dates may be off, some details may be incorrect, but the overall interpretation is sound, in my view, for this and the events coming next yet to be told of. I really like his pyramid theory. It fits with and explains the bizarre internal architecture of the structure, which I will not detail here, or else it would at minimum double the length of the video. It also, allegedly, as I have found no original source by which to verify this claim, fits with the state in which the Caliph al-Mamun and his boys found the interior of the Great Pyramid in the 800s AD, coated in a layer of pulverized limestone dust. Had they known to look for them, they might have even noticed the hints of where Marduk and his rescuers had stepped on their way out, footprints still undisturbed within the previously sealed pyramid from several thousands of years before. I hope that mental image gives you an idea of just how literally real this all was, or At least an idea of the gravity and reality our ancestors viewed it with. Just something to break through the, nuh-uh, it's all just allegory, myth for ritual purposes, experts confirmed. Just anything to get through that attitude I find so depressingly common. Again, it's not as if there's some other genre of ancient records that omit the gods. These are the tales they felt were significant enough to record, and had their significance recognized through countless generations, such that they survive for us to wonder at today, describing a coherent narrative with explicable motivations. This is history. Like I said, I don't think Sitchin is right about everything, but you already know how I feel about just discounting him out of hand and calling him pseudo-history simply for speculating. Or if you don't already know, it's me wondering what they think my response is going to be to them nitpicking about this or that character in his translations. Do they think I'll say, oh wow, one character can be interpreted differently? Well, you've sure shown me. I guess now that makes it completely reasonable for virtually every culture, both extant and historical, to have folklore relating to a cargo cult relationship with what appear to be extraterrestrials. It really is all just myth for ritual purposes, even the extreme specificity of near impossible coincidences, especially those. Thank you. Thank you for opening my eyes. Truly, my faith in the scientism is restored. Honestly, you're gonna have to do a lot better than that to overcome a preponderance of evidence this preponderous. And what do they think? Like, it's physically impossible to disagree over the interpretation of a highly contextual language with a lot of room for interpretation? In truth, they're probably just wishing all those evil science deniers would just accept that us common folk are not permitted to form our own interpretations on religious texts, and we must submit to the authority of the sacred infallible experts. It's just basic science. Religious zealots can't understand it, apparently. Seriously, though, the lib worldview is truly incredible, being fundamentally based around constant admissions of guilt via projection. But man, I am digressing hard. So fine. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that Sitchin butchered the translation of that Babylonian fragment I stuck in the middle there. Or hell, even totally fabricated it, and there is no such tablet. If we delete that trial of Marduk, is the tale considerably less compelling? Does it become impossible to extrapolate what may have occurred between the death of Dumuzi and Marduk suddenly being capitally punished for a serious crime? Perhaps you can see why I find this interpretation compelling. Really, I think the biggest uncertainty, and thus the strongest argument against it on the merits, is the question of the timeline. How do we know these stories fit together in this order? The short answer is we don't. We have none of the convenient cause and effect of the early stories, such as where the Earth consequently must exist before stuff can happen there, that sort of thing. I think the strongest point in favor of this interpretation is, sadly, its lack of serious competition. Like, if you have a differing interpretation, then please present it. But if it involves blanket insisting there just is no continuity, because all these stories are just myth for ritual purposes written by primitives who lived before a certain arbitrary point in history, back when otherwise behaviorally modern people were somehow simply incapable of recording events without including the interference of these assuredly not real entities. Albeit not real entities which show remarkable similarity and constancy across cultures, regions, and eras far too vast to be bridged by conventional explanations of cultural diffusion or common ancestry, and who also coincidentally sound remarkably like space aliens in their attributes. If that's your explanation, then respectfully, shut up, nerd. If you're not going to take this seriously and actually make a reasoned argument, then GTFO until you can. I don't care if the CIA kills me over it. I will die on this hill. The mainstream historiographical narrative is so weak that it seems like it's at real risk of just saying it self-identifies as mythology being fake, and we're all blasphemous transphobes if we disagree. And so, here we are. The stage is now set for catastrophe. Things are a lot more complicated now than they were at the humble beginnings of our tale. As many angles as there are players now. So please stay tuned for the dramatic climax of this saga coming up next month. In the meantime, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and support me over on Patreon or on my website, churchoftransphobia.com. Peace.